In unknown lands, several rather strong and powerful warriors gathered near a huge rock. Those gathered accused a certain demon of all mortal sins and expressed a desire for revenge. At the tip of the stone structure stood a very handsome guy, covered in someone else's blood. A beautiful girl standing on a magic sword reproached the demon for his moral decline. This was a very beautiful maiden who was also the master of this mountain, named Laura. Hearing her stupid words, the demon Hugh only burst into hysterical laughter. The guy glanced at the warriors surrounding him and did not see a single worthy opponent among them. The demon was furious that his peace was disturbed by such losers. Laura made a magic gesture with her fingers and promised to put Hugh to rest forever. Her gesture was a signal to attack. The warriors simultaneously rushed at the enemy. The guy remained unshaken. He calmly made secret movements with his hands. Suddenly, a pillar of crimson light struck from the sky. The warriors were getting closer with each passing moment. Hugh planned to teleport and escape, but his opponents began to hold the portal with their abilities. There was a powerful explosion, and all the masters were thrown in different directions. The warriors caught their breath. It seemed to them as if the demon had killed himself so as not to give him the satisfaction of defeat. After some time, everyone who took part in this battle rode off into the sunset, rejoicing in their victory. A month later, the demon moved into the body of a young man from one of the villages. Hugh sat up on the bed and smiled wickedly, admiring his own clever move. The hero received a message asking him to gather his strength before starting to commit new atrocities. The demon had already begun to imagine how he would become the most powerful being in this world and get everything he wanted. Hugh decided to test the characteristics of his new body. The protagonist was stunned with surprise. His story was unenviable. It was Ray's teacher who died in a duel for the heart of his beloved girl, and Hugh sympathized with him. The demon decided to take revenge for such injustice, but it was necessary to improve the physical abilities of the body. After a whole hour of meditation, the guy achieved no results. Hugh just chuckled. He had a plan for just such a situation. Meanwhile, the students were heatedly discussing the recent victory over the demon. Hugh watched them from behind a tree, amused by the stories of his death. A moment later, the guy came out to his subordinates, who greeted him with respect. The hero didn't really say anything, but just left, whistling an unknown tune. One of the students suspected the mentor of having a connection with a demon. The others hastened to calm him down. Later, Hugh came to the temple gate where the local master was located and asked for a meeting. There on the throne sat Laura, who had recently participated in the massacre of the hero. The teacher knelt down and begged the girl to help him with his studies. The teacher resolutely refused, arguing that the guy himself was to blame for his problems. Hugh objected to Laura quite loudly, accusing her of wasting resources that should have been his. The girl looked at the swearing teacher with contempt, lying businesslike on the throne. A second later, the master slammed the table hard and demanded that Hugh behave with dignity. The hero suggested that Laura was depriving him of resources because her name was similar to a demon's. The girl asked the guy not to think about such nonsense and promised to provide medicine to heal his wounds. Surprisingly, Hugh refused and asked for another favor. The hero approached Laura and asked her to begin his training, not only to heal him, but also to improve his abilities. The demon bowed sweetly and asked politely. The master became very embarrassed. Her whole face turned red. A moment later, she exploded like a volcano. She was not satisfied with her subordinate's tone. Laura prepared her magic sword and threatened to punish the teacher. The demon made a sign with his fingers and broke the girl's weapon, greatly surprising her. The master was frightened. No one had ever been able to contain her power. A few seconds later, the hero pounced on the girl, begging her to fulfill his request. The guy leaned over Laura and explained that he had sealed her abilities. The demon touched the girl's beautiful face and told her that he had used this ability on that mountain. Hugh looked greedily into her eyes. Now he could control her as he pleased. Laura urged the boy to show her at least a drop of respect. She promised to kill the disobedient student. The hero threatened to tell the master of another mountain about the girl's loss of powers. Then she would want to take revenge for the murder of his family. Laura thought about it. She couldn't let Master Gina know about this. Having thought about and weighed the situation, the girl nevertheless decided to provide the guy with everything he needed. Hugh pounced on Laura like a hungry beast. He needed something completely different. The demon called it punishment for her joining the battle against him, even though he had done nothing wrong to her village. After these words, the hero used an ancient technique to prevent the girl from resisting. The demon approached the master's face and offered to fulfill his request for the last time. A moment later, Laura's face was covered with horror and disgust. The guy had committed a terrible act. A few hours later, Hugh got dressed and decided to leave the girl lying on the bed. Laura fulfilled the hero's request, so she asked him to remove the seal. The guy firmly refused and advised her to live without strength, like an ordinary person. Moreover, Hugh showed a magic crystal that allowed one to put the ability there. Laura was horrified. The demon said goodbye and offered to cooperate, since only he could remove the seal. He also advised against trying to take the crystal by force, as Hugh's death would lead to tragic consequences. The girl trembled a little, realizing the hopelessness of this situation. The protagonist left the temple with a majestic gait. He was the winner. As they parted, Laura promised him the most painful death for all his actions. Meanwhile, the demon looked thoughtfully at the starry sky. He didn't expect that his plan would take so long. In his past life, he paid little attention to stabilizing his skills, which is why he lost. The guy decided to take the long-hidden resources, but he needed to leave these lands. On his way, he came across a shop where you could rent a boat. The demon grinned. It seemed like a sign. Everything was going too well. A few minutes later, the hero was already crossing the canyon in a brand new boat. He stopped in a small cave and walked towards a large boulder. He bit the tip of his finger and drew a pentagram on the stone with his blood. The boulder vanished like an illusion, and in its place stood a large wooden chest. Suddenly, the guy was called out. He turned around sharply and was very surprised. Right behind him, there was another boat in the air, with 3 people in the vessel. Chief among them was a guy named Alan, who had killed the old owner of the demon body 10 days ago. Alan cruelly mocked the hero, calling him trash. Before leaving, Hugh promised that in 10 days they would fight in the arena. Alan's friends started laughing at such a ridiculous threat. The guy felt very cool. The enemy's boat emerged from the cave, and the narcissistic Alan used technology to spread the news of the upcoming duel over long distances. The villagers who heard about this did not understand how the protagonist could challenge such a strong opponent. Later, the demon returned to the temple of Laura, who was under his influence. Entering the main hall, he informed the girl of his return, apparently expecting to impress her. The master was on the throne, unable to move. The demon was approaching her. Hugh asked her to repeat what he had done in the morning, and the girl began to insult what she considered to be a rebellious student. First, he asked Laura to look at something interesting. The protagonist folded his fingers, and glowing red seals formed around him. He directed them towards the temple gates. Laura was perplexed. A moment later, the building was covered in a magical sphere. The girl could not understand how a simple student could possess such outstanding abilities. The hero offered to give this technique to Laura in exchange for something special, but she refused. After this, Hugh offered the girl something to eat, holding out an apple. The master felt disgust towards him. She once again promised to kill the guy. He pushed her to point out Laura's helplessness. Before leaving, the demon said that he had set a deadly trap in the next room, so you shouldn't go there. He sarcastically remarked that the master's death would upset him. The girl was angered by this sarcastic phrase. After some time, the hero sat alone in the meditation hall, reading a book. With the help of a magical scripture and an unusual fruit, he planned to reconstruct the foundations of his abilities. He eagerly reached for the fruit and greedily bit off a large piece of it. In combination with the book, he was able to begin the process of rebuilding the foundations. The guy opened the chapter. The process was completed. Now he became mortal. The demon began to meditate in order to master new abilities. His goal was to push the limits of his body's maximum capabilities. A week later, the breakthrough stage was complete, and Hugh had now returned to the abilities of his former shell. A giant whirlwind formed over the peak belonging to Laura. He was watched by Eliza, who was the master of the neighboring mountain. Hugh continued to meditate, his goal becoming to remove his shackles and take over the entire world. To his surprise, he managed to achieve maximum development. But unfortunately, this body turned out to be special, so it will take a lot of time to improve it. The demon's face twisted into an evil smile. He decided to use his assistant master. Meanwhile, Laura was sweetly eating a sweet apple, enjoying the minutes of silence. When she saw the main character, she began to insult her offender again. The demon sat down next to the girl. He really missed her and her beauty. The master had not washed herself for a long time, so she demanded to be allowed to go to the bathroom immediately. The guy grabbed Laura by the hand, which really scared the poor girl. Hugh threw his hostage on the bathroom floor, the girl dreaming of escaping from him. The demon came closer to her, and suddenly she felt a presence at the gates of the temple. Master Richard stood on the threshold, having come to visit his friend, who had not left the village for a long time. The guy brought her a special medicine from the alchemy master. Laura, who was abused by the demon Hugh, said that she needed peace now. Richard also spoke about the upcoming duel between the hero and Alan. Meanwhile, the main character continued to bully the poor girl. The unexpected guest decided to play the flute to try to cheer up his sister. The music reached Laura. She lay there, blushing with shame. Hugh was pleased with himself. The demon offered the unfortunate girl to voluntarily give him all her available resources. That same evening, the hero brought some medicine for the master. Laura scornfully declared that she did not need such handouts and again demanded that it be unsealed. Hugh didn't resist and simply gathered his supplies and headed for the exit. Left alone, the girl decided to try asking the sacred master for help. Laura fell to the floor, overcome by a panic attack, afraid that she might remain mortal and grow old. Suddenly, she pulled out a bronze fox mask from her towel. This artifact was dropped by Hugh in the past. It can be used to hide oneself from people with magical abilities. Laura immediately put on her mask. It was vital for her to come up with a plan for escape. The demon sitting in the room that belonged to the previous owner of his body felt it. For him, the master in such a mask was even more beautiful and attractive. As a reward for his evil deeds and the improvement of his abilities, he received a sword. The guy wanted to use it as his main weapon, so he started developing it. The demon released his projection. It flew very quickly on a magic sword. After a while, Hugh was very far from the location of his physical shell. Finally, he reached the extreme point where pillars of light were shooting out of the sky. Immediately after this, he began to comprehend the purpose of the sword. A laser hit the guy's head and everything around was surrounded by a mysterious aura. The sword possessed the element of wind and the ability of divine punishment. After this process, Hugh flew back. With the help of this weapon, he will defeat Alan with one blow. Master Eva watched the glow in the sky and was perplexed. The girl noted that only a true sword god is capable of rising to such a height and performing the ritual. 3 days later, a crowd of people gathered in the arena to watch the upcoming fight. Alan showed up with his friend John, who wasn't very impressed. The guy congratulated John on reaching a new level of skill. Katrin appeared next to the elite warrior. She was his partner on the neighboring peak. The beautiful girl was rooting for the main character, so Alan laughed and hastened to dispel her hopes. Hugh was late, and many of the spectators decided that he was too scared to fight. In the center of the square stood a girl named Meryl, who reproached those gathered for their lack of respect. The girl was a favorite of many people, so the audience was quick to obey her order. A moment later, the main character arrived at the arena on a boat. The guy's face was calm and unwavering. He had no doubt about his victory. Meryl, mistaking the demon for her old friend Ray, rushed straight to Hugh. The protagonist promised the girl to defeat Alan, placing his hand on her head in a friendly manner. In the past, she meditated and accidentally injured Ray. The demon calmed Meryl down. Hugh noticed Catherine, noticing her good figure, but rather useless skills. The girl was an old friend of Ray's, so she immediately noticed a different person in him. Alan discussed with John killing the hero to impress Catherine, with whom he had long been in love. The guy called out to Hugh and asked him to start the fight quickly so as not to waste his time. The demon agreed, but on the condition that Alan listened to his speech. The hero took out a magic potion and offered to make a small bet. The gathered onlookers began to discuss this medicine. According to rumors, it can accelerate the process of developing divine abilities. John really wanted to get this potion. Meryl was afraid that if the master found out about the dispute, a scandal would start. The protagonist expressed dissatisfaction with the fact that no one present realized the true power of this medicine. An elder standing nearby explained that the price for one bottle could reach $1 million, and Hugh had 6 of them. A gloomy John wondered how he could get an equal rate. The demon hastened to reassure the public that the people would be able to raise the required amount through joint efforts. A moment later, people rushed to bet money on the hero's loss. The guy hit the jackpot and appointed the peak elder as judge. A few minutes later, Hugh arrived at the arena to fight Alan. The narcissistic scoundrel expressed disdain for the protagonist. The demon looked at him with a predatory gaze and urged him to start the battle quickly. The elder announced the start of the duel and enclosed the arena with a dome. John grinned his nasty smile. He had no doubt that Alan would win. The guy planned to quickly deal with the hero, swatting him like a fly. A second later, he was already rushing at Hugh like an enraged tiger. Alan raised his leg to deliver a powerful blow, while the hero stood motionless. The demon dodged the powerful attack very skillfully, leaving his opponent shocked. Alan admitted that the hero wasn't so pathetic, but this only made the guy more determined to kill him. A moment later, he began to accumulate a powerful clot of energy in his hand. After this, Alan released several sharp magic swords from his palm. The demon again masterfully dodged a blow that would have inevitably killed him. Meryl was very worried about the boy, because any mistake would lead to his death. Alan immediately made a lightning-fast dash towards the hero. He tried to strike again, but again nothing worked. The protagonist began to tease his worthless opponent. Alan completely lost his temper and began to draw his sword to finish off Hugh. The guy pounced on the demon who stood calmly in place. The main character dodged this attack too. Hugh was tired of this ridiculous performance. Deciding it was time to end the performance, the demon took his new weapon out of its sheath. Alan was at a loss when he saw such a powerful sword on a hero he considered insignificant. Hugh moved away from his opponent. It was part of his plan. Alan suddenly attacked from behind, anticipating his imminent victory. The demon successfully parried the enemy's attack with his hand. His plan succeeded. The hero turned sharply and readied his sharp sword, excitement visible in his eyes. A moment later, a bewildered Alan felt a blade touch his chest. That was the last thing he could feel. His lifeless body fell to the ground. All the spectators were horrified. No one expected such an outcome of the battle. John was furious to see his old friend die. The elder declared the protagonist the undoubted winner of the brutal battle. Spectators were unhappy with the loss of almost all their savings. Suddenly, a stream of blood gushed from the demon's mouth. He did not understand what was happening. Meryl rushed to help her friend. He fell to his knee and leaned on his sword. The hero asked the girl to take him to the place where the true disciples were. Hugh grinned wickedly while no one was looking. He needed to play the role of Ray. John didn't want to let the guy go with a big win, so he came up with a plan. He ordered his protege Neil to become the hero's next opponent. The boy approached the demon and challenged him to a duel. Meryl couldn't understand how he could treat a wounded hero so vilely. John explained that the arena rules allowed this fight to take place. He also forced Hugh to prove his right to own the winnings. The main character gradually began to get annoyed by this guy's impudent behavior. The demon played along with John and agreed on the condition that he raise the bet by a third. The boy didn't realize he was taking part in a stupid performance, so he listened to the hero. Catherine couldn't understand how Hugh could risk his life so stupidly. The protagonist called on those present to make another bet. People didn't believe that Neil would lose, so they bet against the demon again. A few minutes later, the elder announced the beginning of a new battle. Meryl was very worried about the hero, because as she believed, he was seriously injured. Neil said he didn't want to fight, but he had very good reasons. His younger sister is seriously injured, and only the medicine John has can cure her. The boy asked Hugh to forgive him for his bad deed and prepared his sword. The demon was greatly amused by Neil's empty threats. A moment later, the hero found himself behind the enemy, taking him by surprise. Neil only had time to curse the guy for his dirty deed. Hugh promised to take care of his sister. A few seconds later, he pierced the enemy's body with his sword, and everything around was covered in blood. The demon created a magical fireball in his hand. His strength was enough to throw Neil several meters into the air. The unfortunate guy hit his face against the dome above the arena, and the spectators were in shock. The protagonist, putting his sword back into its sheath, declared that Niall was destroyed by his chatter. Everyone, including Catherine, was perplexed by the hero's easy victory. Meryl rushed to hug and praise Hugh. He pretended as if he had not done anything impressive. After that, he began to collect his huge winnings. His valuables bag was full, so he asked Meryl for another one. The girl happily gave him hers, and the demon thanked her. The losing people begged the demon to have mercy and not take all the valuables. Pleased with himself, the hero headed towards his flying boat to get away from there as quickly as possible. The guy really pissed John off. Now he should be more careful. Later, he returned home and spread the winnings on the floor. It took up a lot of space. Hugh decided to send the cheap items to a nearby peak and exchange the expensive ones. Suddenly, the demon felt the effect of Laura's bronze mask. At this time, the girl was talking with Eva, who reported on the guy's recent adventures with a sword. The master asked Laura if she had noticed any strange behavior in the hero. Eva asked her friend to train Hugh, because in the future, he could become the emperor of the divine sword. Deep down, the girl knew that she would have to continue to be a toy in the hands of this madman. The demon overheard the conversation and chuckled, because none of the masters suspected his true nature. Later, the guy came to Laura and offered to continue their so-called activities. The girl reproached her student for hiding his sword development ritual. Hugh roughly wrapped his arm around Laura's waist and stated that he simply didn't want to disturb her. He approached her face. The master promised not to allow him to commit his crime today. The demon pounced on the defenseless girl like a hungry beast. After his vile act, he noticed that the efficiency of his development was declining, so he thought about trying to remove the seal next time. The guy quickly changed his mind. He didn't want to take that much of a risk. The rebellious student said goodbye to his mentor and the girl wanted to kill him even more. That evening, the hero arrived at a nearby peak where he planned to sell valuables. He was met by one of the students named Evelyn. She was very pretty. The girl had heard about the hero's achievements in the arena, so she immediately captured his attention. Evelyn led Hugh deeper into the building, the demon alarmed by the excessive kindness. The girl noticed that the guy wasn't buying anything, but was just looking at the assortment of goods. The demon was thinking about how to gain an advantage in his development. His gaze greatly frightened the student. The hero asked the girl to bring him medicine worth 15 million. Evelyn was stunned by such an impressive sum and did not understand why he needed so many goods. As the student went to carry out his request, Hugh noticed something strange. The boy's sword reacted strangely to a piece of bronze lying on the shelf. A moment later, he picked it up, and almost immediately Evelyn appeared and reported that the goods were already lying downstairs. The demon asked how much this trinket cost. The girl said that he could take it for free. Despite this, the guy gave her a small bag of money, but the student became embarrassed. As Hugh was heading for the exit, Evelyn stopped him and asked for some help. A few minutes later, they were sitting in the girl's room. She was happily looking at the guy who responded to the request. The student asked if the protagonist knew about the Divine Tower. The guy said that it contains the ancient weapons of the emperors and is guarded by a sacred clan. In addition, they conduct tests there to check the student's talents and resilience. The girl whispered that one of the secret kingdoms would soon open. On this occasion, a test will be held among the strongest warriors, one of whom is the hero. Evelyn approached the demon's face and asked him to help her. The next day, the protagonist was meditating in his room. The guy failed to develop his skills. He needed 3 artifacts. Hugh started thinking about a solution to this problem, because simply buying them wouldn't work. Suddenly, he remembered his conversation with Evelyn yesterday. She told him that one of the test participants had the fruit he needed. The hero had an idea to visit the Divine Tower to get it. 3 days later, there were a lot of people around the tower who wanted to test their strength. Elders Adam and Abigail argued about who would win this time. Among all the boats, only one stood out, furiously rushing towards the gathering place. The elders could not understand who was so eager to begin the test. Hugh emerged from it, absolutely confident in his invincibility. The guy noticed a girl named Cheryl, who was being praised and congratulated by everyone. One of those gathered supported himself, promising to enter the top 10. The guy introduced himself to the demon passing by as Oliver. Hugh was wary. The name meant the conqueror of evil, and besides, there was a strange aura emanating from it. Oliver admired the hero's recent fight in the arena, and the demon thanked him. The student saw in his new acquaintance the makings of a future loyal friend. Hugh noticed in him a man from whom all the luck could be sucked dry. It was time for the hero to begin his test, and he said goodbye to Oliver. After this, the demon climbed up to the entrance of the tower, overcoming many steps. On the very first floor, he was greeted by a mysterious cave, in whose depths predatory eyes could be seen. Their mysterious glow belonged to a pack of hungry wolves. The protagonist took his sword out of its sheath, saddened by such a miserable meeting. A second later, the aggressive animals attacked the guy together, and he assumed a fighting stance. With one deft swing of his dagger, he chopped down absolutely all the wolves. Hugh hoped that the next test would be much more difficult and interesting. After a long time, the guy reached the 67th floor. There he was met by a beautiful woman, begging the hero to stay with her. The demon did not succumb to the woman's charm and deftly slashed his sword across her neck. On the next floor, Hugh encountered several very strong enemies. A moment later, all 4 were brutally killed by the guy. They were unable to do anything against him. On the 98th floor, the hero found himself in a field covered with crimson flowers, and in its center stood a mysterious figure. It belonged to a girl named Mary. Her skills were at a very high level. The demon immediately guessed that she was a powerful primeval emperor. Hugh was delighted at the sight of a worthy opponent and rushed at the enemy. The girl skillfully parried the guy's attack, which greatly surprised him. The hero made a desperate attempt to hit Mary with his foot. Unfortunately, this also turned out to be pointless. The girl turned out to be too agile and strong. The emperor powerfully pushed her opponent aside, causing him to become confused. A moment later, the girl made a lightning-fast dash towards the main character. The palms of the 2 powerful warriors collided, creating a shockwave. Mary attempted to suddenly attack the guy with her secret technique. The protagonist's face twisted into a mad smile in anticipation of his victory. The girl missed, and Hugh dealt her a crushing blow. A moment later, the guy was holding Mary tightly by the neck and choking her. He was covered in her blood. The demon let go of the poor girl's body. It looked quite creepy. Suddenly, the main character's body was engulfed in a pillar of flame coming from the sky. This portal took him to the final 98th floor, where he would have to choose the final reward. Hugh walked up to the slab with the image of the sword and activated it. The boy immediately began to develop his skills in handling bladed weapons in order to receive a more valuable reward. After this, a giant sacred blade appeared in front of the main character. The sword was so heavy that the demon could hardly hold it in his hands. With just one blow of this mighty weapon, he created a huge crack in the floor. The hero burst into hysterical laughter, foreseeing all his future greatness. Meanwhile, a very large crowd had gathered in the square in front of the tower. Among them was Evelyn, whose friend assured her that Hugh would not be able to get to the medicine that would cure her mother. She expressed dissatisfaction with the guy's behavior and asked him to leave her alone. Deep down, Evelyn was hoping for the main character to appear soon and was very worried about him. Suddenly, the sacred bell rang, announcing the end of the tournament. Everyone gathered, held their breath, and looked at the exit from the tower. A moment later, Hugh came out and apologized for his long absence. Evelyn rushed to the hero. She was immeasurably happy at his appearance. Absolutely everyone around started praising the guy. Some asked for his autograph. The main character couldn't believe what was happening, because before everyone hated him because of his demonic nature. Adam and Abigail suddenly appeared, congratulated the guy, and informed him that the sacred master wanted to meet him. A few minutes later, the demon came to the castle to meet him. To Hugh's surprise, Laura was in the room, still wearing her mask and looking embarrassed at the sight of him. Eva sat in the center of the room and congratulated the hero on such impressive successes in his development. The guy bowed politely to her. He expected to receive a very valuable reward for his efforts. Suddenly, Laura jumped up from her seat and called Hugh a rebellious student, pointing her finger at him. Eva rushed to calm her best friend down, clearly not understanding why she had lost her temper. The boy bowed again and asked to be given the magic fruit, milk, and the golden flower. Laura was angered by the hero's impudence, considering him a greedy scoundrel. Eva reported that the treasury did not contain the required artifacts, so she would send people who would help find them. Secretly, the protagonist had already decided to place a seal on the girl to make her a slave like Laura. He made magical gestures with the hand behind his back. The magical aura of the seal surrounded the beautiful Eva, but nothing happened. It turned out that he would have to remove the old one in order to apply two at once. In his nasty fantasies, he had already imagined a harem of Laura and Eva. Besides, the demon will receive a dose of poison for such a villainy. Hugh grinned evilly. The girl sitting on the throne once again praised the guy, and he thanked her. The protagonist headed for the exit, accompanied by a disgruntled Laura. Suddenly, Eva felt a sense of danger surrounding her, but she didn't know where it was coming from. The girl attributed everything to simple fatigue and decided to go for a walk. Later, a giant flying ship could be seen in the sky. In the main cabin were Hugh, his assistant master, and two maids. The demon asked the servants to leave them alone. The girl could not contain her fear. Realizing her mistake, she assured the workers that everything was fine. When the maids left, the hero cast a soundproofing technique on the room. The guy noticed that they were left alone and considered it necessary not to miss such an opportunity. Proud Laura took off her mask and accused the student of bullying her. The demon reassured the girl, saying that there was no evil intent in his intentions. Moreover, the guy reminded that only he could return Laura's abilities. The master closed her eyes to imagine that this scoundrel was not around. Suddenly, the hero handed her new tights and asked her to put them on. In return, he promised a reward. The gift fit her figure perfectly, and she became much more attractive. The main character tried to grope the defenseless girl, but she fought him off. Laura expressed dislike for her student's personality, and Hugh was dissatisfied with her stubbornness. After a while, the demon attacked rudely. The girl screamed loudly, but no one heard her. The hero threatened the unfortunate master to tell everyone about her secret. The girl had no choice but to submit to the will of her offender. The next day, the student was walking near his house. He had already given Evelyn the medicine for her mother. During the walk, he read scrolls from Eva. According to her, the necessary artifacts had not yet been found. The boy noticed two students reading the newly updated divine list. The boys discussed the death of the demon Hugh and believed that a new villain would take his place. The protagonist smiled at the sight of his students, unaware of his true nature. Suddenly, the guys were very upset. Their friend was removed from the list of low-level saints, and a certain Amanda took her place. Hearing this name, the hero stopped abruptly and looked intently at the couple. He was clearly familiar with this girl. A moment later, the demon approached the students and asked them to sell him the newspaper. The boys gave the teacher the brochure for free as a sign of deep respect. In fact, the couple did not want to get involved with such a mysterious and powerful man. The main character immersed himself in reading the newspaper he received with great interest. Seeing the name of a certain Amanda in it, he remembered his old acquaintance. Far in the past, they lay together on the grass and looked at the starry sky. All the girl's clothes were torn, but she was not at all sad. The main character and Amanda met each other. The girl sincerely thanked the guy for helping with her parents' funeral. Demon and Amanda touched their palms and decided to become a family. In the present, Hugh sent Meryl a telepathic signal asking for help in finding an old acquaintance. A few minutes later, the out-of-breath girl arrived at the scene. Meryl was a little worried as the hero stood alone and looked at the moon. The sweet girl asked Hugh to contact her if he felt the bitterness of his old life. The guy thanked his girlfriend for being so kind to him. In fact, the demon felt pleasure because it was he who organized the attack on Ray's village. Meryl noticed that the guy became more open to her and blushed. Suddenly, she reached out to the hero's face and passionately kissed him on the cheek. He was dumbfounded. After this, the girl handed him an envelope with the report he had asked for. Meryl's face was red with shame, and she asked Hugh to go to bed early. The demon was still in a stupor from his friend's unexpected action. The report revealed that Amanda had recently been seen in a nearby town. Meanwhile, part of the settlement was engulfed in flames. There was a wounded man in one of the houses, and he asked the villain to stop. An angry Amanda was in the sky, her eyes covered with a blindfold. The dying old man cursed the girl and promised to take revenge on her. Amanda swung her sword sharply, creating a shockwave. With her attack, she hit the man directly and brutally killed him. The girl looked very creepy in the moonlight, reflecting on her blade. She descended to the ground, and a mysterious spirit appeared next to her. He asked if Amanda really planned to kill everyone she met along the way. She said that she would destroy everyone on the way to her lover. At this time, the main character was meditating on a cliff. He had not developed his skills for a long time. But it was difficult to improve his abilities, the guy finished. A female silhouette stood behind him. It belonged to a girl named Lily, who had been looking for the main character for a long time. The demon noticed a seal on her chest, similar to the one he had placed on Laura. The guy was puzzled by his discovery and decided that the master had assumed someone else's guise. The hero greeted the girl and bowed politely to her as a sign of respect. Lily sat down on a rock and asked if Hugh was planning to visit the demon wasteland. The demon answered vaguely, sat down next to her, and asked for advice. He wondered why, during the ancient war between humans and demons, the monsters were not completely killed. The girl explained that there had previously been rumors of a secret agreement between the human and demon emperors. The hero asked if there were people in the world stronger than the great emperor. Lily looked at the stars mysteriously. According to her, all the former rulers disappeared without a trace, so there is no information about this. Suddenly, the girl stood up from the stone. She did not want to talk about such ambitious things. The new acquaintance was about to leave and invited the guy to meet after his return from the demonic wasteland. The protagonist said goodbye to her and promised to definitely look forward to their soon meeting. Later, Hugh returned to the temple, planning to get new resources from Laura. Approaching the gate, he heard a conversation between the master and an unknown guy. It turned out to be a student named Jacob, who was present at the tournament accompanied by Evelyn. The boy angrily asked the mistress of the temple to give him the magic sand, which he promised to give to the girl. The hero overheard their conversation and decided to teach the vile Jacob a lesson. A moment later, Hugh entered the room and asked if the guy needed the artifact. The student joyfully rushed to the protagonist and said that he would hand it over to Evelyn. The demon took out magic sand from his pocket. Jacob looked at it like a treasure. The nasty guy planned to use it to blackmail the unfortunate girl. Soon the guys agreed on a price of $1 million and shook hands. Hugh clapped him on the shoulder and remarked that they were friends, his tone of voice changing strangely. Suddenly the hero took out a few more stones of sand. Jacob turned pale. He would have to buy all the copies to blackmail Evelyn. A moment later, the demon poured a whole mountain of stones onto the floor, and the guy's plan was ruined. Jacob accused Laura of irresponsibly raising her student. The girl didn't care about these stupid reproaches. She ordered the guy to leave immediately. The offended student hastened to fulfill the master's request and headed towards the gate. After his departure, Laura accused the hero of inappropriate behavior. The demon sat down next to her. He didn't like that she called him a rebellious student. He took out his new toy and began tickling her until she started calling him brother. The main character mocked the defenseless girl and giggled evilly. He took the peach from her, arguing that she had gained excess weight. The guy stopped tickling Laura and asked if she had fulfilled his request. The girl brought him to the Imperial Hall but there was absolutely nothing there. The master immediately began rummaging through the pillow lying nearby. From there, she took out a wooden box containing 3 small round stones. The main character praised the master, and the girl even felt pleased. Suddenly, Hugh began to massage Laura's legs with them. She looked at the guy's face with horror. His request turned out to be a trap for her. A few seconds later, the demon roughly threw the poor girl onto the bed. He was planning to start torturing her again, and all Laura had to do was turn her flushed face away from him. In the morning, the hero left the girl alone and got ready for his business. In fact, the master was pretending to be asleep, waiting for the right moment. The protagonist forgot to put a seal on her, so she began to meditate. Suddenly, she noticed that her skills had developed a little, even though she hadn't been practicing them at all. Laura figured out how to escape from captivity and began to create an energy ball in her hand. Unfortunately, she didn't succeed, and the cloud of energy evaporated. It turned out that the main character can apply seals even when he is very far away. The girl imagined the student's doll and hit it with all her might. Suddenly, Laura felt a strange movement in her stomach. A week later, many people gathered at the portal leading to the wasteland of monsters. Eva explained that the teleport would be available for 30 days, then it would be closed forever, and participants would have to give up some of their loot upon exiting. Hugh yawned as he listened to her boring speech. All he wanted to do was get to the story of the demon fruit. Suddenly, the hero heard Oliver's voice. The guy was running towards him. The boys exchanged a few words, and it turned out that the student was also going to enter the portal. The demon noticed confusion in him, and he asked him to step aside and talk. Unbeknownst to the protagonist, Oliver communicated telepathically with an unknown woman. It was Eliza who was nearby, who ordered her student to kill the hero at any cost. Suddenly, a boat with 2 men on board passed by her. It was John talking about Hugh's murder with his friend named Lucas. Eliza was pleased with this unexpected turn of events. At this time, the main character was called out by 2 familiar female voices. They belonged to Meryl and Evelyn, who came to say goodbye to the boy. In addition, the pink-haired girl handed him the heavy sword he asked her for. The hero tried to swing it. It fit perfectly in his hand. Hugh thanked his friend. She promised to do everything he asked. Meryl asked the boy to be careful during the hike. The demon encouraged her. Evelyn handed him a bag with all sorts of useful things. She also said that her mother had recovered and would be very happy if the hero came in for tea. Meryl, standing to the side, looked at them with displeasure. Suddenly, a pillar of bright purple light struck the portal from the sky. Ava announced the start of the test and asked the participants to get ready. Hugh said goodbye to his friends and promised to return as soon as possible. When he walked away, Meryl screamed at her companion and ordered her not to behave like that in front of the guy again. Evelyn asked her friend to calm down. She had no bad intentions towards the main character. The pink-haired girl thought she was making fun of her and looked at her intently. Suddenly, a flame of anger formed around her. Everyone around became afraid. Meanwhile, the participants had already entered the territory of the monster wasteland. The demon walked behind everyone. He decided that he absolutely needed to team up with Oliver. Suddenly, a group of warriors called out to him. The guy couldn't understand what was going on. A moment later, the men drew their swords and rushed towards him, and Hugh could only run. He summoned his magic boat to facilitate his escape. He managed to jump into the transport at the very last moment. The enemies were far behind and were looking straight after the fleeing demon. From their conversations, it became clear that they were mercenaries sent by John. The demon child soul fruit was located on a high mountain and looked like several stems, like hands reaching out to the fruit. The artifact was guarded by a giant snake, and the main character just appeared before it. The huge monster opened its mouth and rushed straight at him. The demon prepared to attack, so he raised his new sword. The guy only struck once, but it was so strong that the snake's head was separated from its body. The monster's dead carcass fell to the ground, with Hugh standing next to it. Suddenly, particles began to fly out of the carcass, gathering into a strange flower. The main character took it in his hand and decided to exchange the plant for development points. The student finally reached 500,000 points. Hugh sat down on a stone and sighed languidly. His whole body was filled with pain, but he found the strength to get up. Now his goal was the fruit. After a few minutes, the demon reached his target. The fruit was apparently not yet ripe. Hugh grabbed his head. He could not believe such a ridiculous failure. Suddenly, the guy's face changed, and a plan was born in his head. When it was deep night, the main character, for some unknown reason, was picking grass in the forest. Suddenly, Hugh was called from behind, and he carefully turned around to look at the intruders. There was a group of 5 people standing behind him. The leader was named Rick. He asked if there was only one hero. The guy's face twisted into a sly smile. which aroused the demon's serious suspicions. Rick, using telepathy, warned his comrades that the main character was very strong and dangerous. The suspicious guy assured the student of his good intentions and asked if he was being pursued. The beautiful girl who was part of the group pretended to be scared and worried, and she played her part beautifully. The demon reported strange people he met at the entrance to the portal. The girl took the hero by the hand and offered to join forces with him to ensure his safety. Hugh, who had seen through the trap from the start, looked at the warriors. The enemies discussed the hero's stupidity among themselves. They did not understand what they had gotten themselves into. After some persuasion, the demon allowed the gang to accompany him. The girl came closer and hugged his arm tightly to dispel the feeling of anxiety. A little later, the protagonist led the group to his camp, where a lamb was roasting over a fire. Hugh, as a sign of friendship, offered them to eat and drink as much as they wanted. After these words, the guy drank a whole glass of alcoholic drink. The girl watched him carefully and decided that the wine was not poisoned. The hero was having a friendly conversation with one of the warriors, joking and feigning interest. A second later, a strong gust of wind extinguished the fire, and everyone froze in anticipation. The protagonist looked angrily at his new acquaintances, indicating their intentions to kill him. The squad members did not expect such an outcome. Rick suddenly became very tense. The leader of the mercenary gang took out his giant hammer. The demon sat calmly in place. A moment later, the guy rushed straight towards him, intending to kill him once and for all. At the very last moment, Hugh dodged Rick's devastating attack. The hero suddenly turned to the rest of the squad and invited them to take a close look at himself. The enemies felt an unpleasant burning sensation in their chests. In fact, there was no wine. The glasses contained pure poison. An angry Rick asked the demon what he wanted from them. In response, the student threw the girl a small, mysterious scroll. Hugh promised to heal the warriors if they completed his task within 3 days. The enemies realized the hopelessness of their situation and agreed to the hero's terms. Finally, the protagonist said goodbye to the squad and said that he would eagerly await news from them. After some time, two groups of people gathered in one of the wastelands. On one side was a man named Dalton, who was an outstanding student of one of the mountain peaks. Opposite him stood Rick with his henchmen. He lied about Hugh's cowardly escape. He also told about a strange scroll that he dropped in his haste. It contained information about the location of the demon fruit. Dalton couldn't believe his eyes. The man didn't understand why the squad didn't personally take the rare artifact. Rick said he was in too dangerous an area and asked Dalton to help, on the condition that they share the fruit. The man, having taken the scroll, agreed. He promised to immediately gather an army. Dalton smirked. He had no plans to share with anyone. Hugh, sitting on a nearby rock, watched everything that was happening. After some time, Dalton and his squad reached the demonic fruit. His best friend Rose accompanied him the whole way. She looked very powerful. Meanwhile, a small embryo formed inside the magic fruit. One guy who was part of the squad was delighted with the future prey. Unexpectedly, Dalton reported that the fruit had a color different from that of a ripe fruit. The young girl suggested to the leader that he pick the plant and then think about what to do with it. Suddenly, the entire squad was surrounded by a blood-colored aura. Everyone was perplexed. Rose covered her nose and mouth with her hand. She was very frightened by the current situation. Suddenly, one of the warriors standing next to her screamed loudly and grabbed his chest. Within seconds, he grabbed the unfortunate girl and began to strangle her. All the people were suddenly overcome by a fit of hysteria and began to kill each other. Dalton couldn't bear to look at this horrible picture, so he ordered his subordinates to stop. Meanwhile, the embryo inside the demon fruit began to glow red. Half an hour later, the main character arrived at the scene of the bloody massacre. It turned out that the plant needed a human sacrifice to mature. Unfortunately, the fruit had not yet reached the desired stage, which saddened Hugh. The demon decided to get away from here, so as not to fall under the influence of the dangerous artifact. A girl from Rick's squad noticed an uneasy silence on the mountain and began to worry. Suddenly, the hero appeared and rudely reproached the squad for disobedience. The leader began to justify himself because he had lured Dalton into a trap. Hugh felt disgusted to look at such cruel and cold-blooded people. Suddenly, everything around was filled with a demonic aura. It was strange. The protagonist accused the squad of bringing the tale after them. A second later, a crowd of mysterious riders appeared in front of them. These were terrible, bloodthirsty demons who threatened to kill all people in their path. Hugh looked at them coldly. Apparently, a real hunt was being launched on him. The guy didn't lose his composure and rushed headlong into an attack on the enemy unit. With one blow of his huge sword, he cut through the head of the demonic bull. The hero placed the blade of his sword against the neck of the demon, who had fallen to the ground and demanded an explanation. After a little torture, the monster confessed that it was sent by a demon from the realm of transcendence. Hugh was shocked by this development of his campaign and looked closely at the enemy. A second later, the guy slashed the demon across the neck, and a fountain of blood gushed out. The fallen enemy's comrades could not understand how a mere mortal could so easily deal with the infernal creature. Hugh left the rest of the enemies for Rick. The girl asked him to heal them first. The protagonist immediately threw a bottle of antidote into her hands. A few seconds later, he was already hovering over the future battlefield in a boat. Hugh said goodbye to the squad. Vile monsters surrounded Rick's unfortunate squad from all sides. They did not believe in their victory. One of the demons grabbed the poor girl and began to cruelly abuse her. She was covered in wounds and her clothes were torn. Meanwhile, the main character has flown very far away. He needs to wait 2 more days before the demonic fruit ripens. Suddenly, he heard a noise coming from right under his boat and decided to check what was going on. The noise came from Oliver, who was standing at the entrance to a dark and deep cave, holding an unknown document in his hands. It turned out to be a treasure map, and the guy enthusiastically prepared to enter the mysterious darkness. At this time, Demon Hugh was hiding behind a nearby stone. Now he too will be able to get his hands on the valuable treasure. As Oliver entered the cave, the hero rushed past him with the speed of lightning. The guy stopped and looked around in fear. He didn't even notice him. Later, the main character made his way deeper into the tunnel. Everything inside was strewn with huge blue crystals. The student took out a small jug and filled it with the magic milk dripping from the stones hanging at the top of the cave. He also found several magical flowers that increased the luck of the person who uses them. A minute later, the hero had collected everything he needed. He was incredibly happy with such a good catch. Suddenly, the demon felt a strong, magical aura behind him and turned around. He saw at the end of the cave 2 pedestals on which were mysterious objects. These were a mysterious fragment of an artifact and a giant red egg. Suddenly, Hugh stopped abruptly because he saw a strange and creepy creature behind the valuable finds. In the corner of the cave lay a huge white snake, fast asleep, and it was not worth disturbing. The main character rushed to the treasure as quickly as possible, so that if the monster woke up, he could escape. Suddenly, he stopped abruptly because he saw a worried Oliver standing to his right. The guy greeted Hugh politely and said that he didn't expect to meet him in such a place. Unfortunately, Oliver activated a trap with his foot, which was designed to protect against intruders. The giant snake immediately came to its senses and froze in a terrifying pose, angrily watching its future prey. A second later, she opened her fanged mouth wide and hissed loudly. The protagonist hurried to grab the valuable artifacts so as not to leave them here. A moment later, he was already at the exit and running with all his might. A confused Oliver looked in horror at the terrible monster. Meanwhile, Laura, Eva, and the other masters were meditating. An out-of-breath old man ran up to them and reported that the badges of most of the students who had entered the portal were rapidly disappearing. Laura was very worried about such bad news. According to the elder, almost 1,000 people had disappeared without a trace. The girl hurried to the man and nervously asked what condition the hero was in. He said that his sign was still burning. Laura acknowledged the terrible disaster that is currently occurring in the territory of the secret demonic kingdom. Eva wanted to calm her worried friend, so she offered to look at what was happening using her magical technique. The master created a magic circle on the ground, stuffed with various signs. In the sky on the other side of the portal, huge eyes began to appear, serving for aerial reconnaissance. The demon squad was greatly frightened of the attack by the human race as soon as they saw the mysterious objects. Also watching the sky was a very important monster standing on a rock ledge. It turned out to be a demonic general named Roland, who urged his army not to worry about such trifles. After his inspiring speech, he ordered his subordinates to kill all the people in the wasteland. The demons rushed in different directions. Roland took out a shard of a magic mirror. It glowed strangely. With its help, he planned to escape from this kingdom. Meanwhile, the masters watched in horror as the demonic creatures rose up. Laura suggested opening a portal immediately to get the remaining students out of the dangerous wasteland. Eva joked that the girl was too worried about her student in a strange way. The organizer assured other craftsmen that it would only be able to open in 2 days. Surprisingly, Laura began to worry about the life of the main character. At this time, a whole crowd of bloodthirsty demons was chasing a couple of people. It was Cheryl's talented student. The guys saw her at the tower test. She was carrying her wounded friend on her back. Hugh stood to the side. He couldn't let the monsters tear the couple apart while the magical eye was watching them. A second later, the guy pulled his heavy sword from its sheath. A major battle was looming. The protagonist landed right behind Cheryl, blocking the path of the horde of demonic creatures. The girl stopped and looked closely at the guy. She remembered the face of the winner of the recent test. The hero tried to calm Cheryl down, saying that he would never leave her here to be torn apart by monsters. After these words, he quickly rushed towards the enemies. The girl did not believe in the strength of what she thought was a simple student. Suddenly, there was a nasty sound. Part of Cheryl's face was covered in blue blood. She was in a state of shock. A terrible picture appeared before her eyes. Parts of the demons' bodies were flying in different directions. The main character masterfully dealt with the vile abominations. When all the monsters were defeated, he proudly stood in the pose of a true winner. Cheryl screamed in fear. She was surprised by the guy's outstanding skills. Hugh hastened to ask the girl about what had happened, and she told him about an ambush organized by a squad of demons. The guy handed her healing mushrooms. She couldn't accept such a valuable artifact, but the hero insisted. The student pointed out her injured friend to her, so that Cheryl would take the medicine at least for her sake. The very frightened girl sincerely and wholeheartedly thanked Hugh for saving them, promising to repay him in the same way in the future. The protagonist ordered Cheryl to hurry and head towards the portal, while he himself still had some things to do. To his surprise, he noticed that the piece of mirror in his pocket was emitting a strange aura. At this time, the masters, who were closely watching the rescue of the students, praised the hero. Some of the mentors even discussed how well Hugh and Cheryl were suited to each other. Eva noted the incredible talent of the main character. Laura was very surprised to hear this. The girl was unhappy that the guy made her go through such a painful experience. Meanwhile, a pair of unknown warriors came for the demonic fruit. They planned to take the artifact for themselves. One of the students warned his partner that he had just heard unfamiliar footsteps. Turning around, they saw the demon Hugh, who asked with displeasure what they needed here. Through telepathic communication, the couple agreed to allow the hero to pick the fruit, after which they would treacherously kill him. One of the guys suggested that Hugh take the fruit and then divide it between the three of them. In response to this, the protagonist expressed his reluctance to approach the demonic plant. A couple of warriors began to insult him and even threatened to kill him if he did not fulfill their request. At that very second, both boys took off and readied their weapons. A fierce battle was brewing. The warrior, dressed in blue robes, used a technique against Hugh that should immobilize him for a while. His partner planned to suddenly attack the hero from behind, but he formed a magical gesture with his fingers and began casting a spell. At that very second, a huge sword materialized in the demon's hand. Now the fight would be fair. A few moments later, a sharp pain pierced the body of the guy in red. Hugh hit him with a blade. His comrade screamed hysterically, threatening to avenge his wounded friend. The protagonist seemed to ignore his words and headed towards the second opponent. The boy didn't have time to understand anything before the blade of the sword pierced his body like butter. The demon asked the enemy to no longer be such a vile and pathetic villain. After the bloody battle ended, Hugh finally plucked the ripe demon fruit. Unfortunately, the tree's roots have rotted and broken, and such fruits will no longer grow here. Suddenly, a warning appeared before the boy's face that he was ready to move on to a new stage of development. But to do so, he would have to pass through the thunder of misfortune, which could kill him. The demon was unhappy with this state of affairs, so he began to loudly curse at everything around him. On the way to the portal, the mirror fragment began to vibrate violently. Apparently, the second part was very close. Suddenly, lurking monsters emerged from all sides. Their goal was to kill the main character at any cost. Roland sensed the presence of half of the artifact, so he was very happy. Luckily, the hero managed to hide behind the nearest tree at the very last moment. He couldn't believe such a ridiculous coincidence. The student remembered the thunder of misfortune, and a new brilliant plan was born in his head. After some time, the guy managed to get on his boat to the place where the reverse teleportation was supposed to take place. There he saw a large number of wounded soldiers, and almost every second the air was pierced by a heart-rending, painful cry. The portal was surrounded by a protective dome, and a gigantic army of demons was rapidly approaching it. Roland waved the magic mirror a few times and it began to emit a strange aura. As a result of these actions, the protective barrier began to quickly collapse, and the warriors were horrified. The general of the horde of monsters ordered the people to immediately hand over to him the man who possessed the second half of the artifact, in exchange for which he promised to spare the warriors. A moment later, the main character stepped forward with a shard in his hand, smiling slyly. The events were observed by the masters using Ava's technology. The girls were horrified, deciding that it was the hero who was the cause of the brutal attack of the demons. Laura didn't believe her student's desperate act, so she looked for a logical explanation for everything. She and Eva came up with an idea to use the secret plan created by the Emperor to prevent the destruction of the demonic realm. Meanwhile, one of the students thanked the protagonist for his voluntary sacrifice. Cheryl entered the conversation. She was unhappy with the warrior's tone and rudely pointed out to the guy his wrongness and disrespect. The girl began to prove to everyone gathered that the monsters would not stop after killing Hugh and called for them to unite. Roland got tired of waiting for the people, so he gave them 1 minute to think, after which the army would attack the students. People started screaming loudly and begging for mercy. None of them wanted to die here. The protagonist put his hand on Cheryl's shoulder and thanked her for her support, promising to deal with the enemies. A moment later, the boy stepped outside the protective barrier and headed towards the horde of demons. The masters could not believe that the student was capable of resisting such strong opponents. Laura was deeply worried about the life of her ward, because only he could remove the seal from her. When Hugh approached the leader of the horde, he slyly noted his bravery and self-sacrifice. Suddenly, the main character took out a box. Inside it was a demonic fruit. Roland was dumbfounded. He bared his fanged mouth and ordered his warriors to immediately take away the valuable artifact. Almost instantly, a crowd of monsters surrounded Hugh, who was holding the magic fruit in his hand. He brought the fruit to his mouth and took a bite. It turned out to be quite tasty. Gray clouds began to form in the sky above the main character, and lightning appeared. The hero's entire body was covered in clots of energy. He was preparing to move on to a new stage of his abilities. The demons rushed straight towards him, believing that now was the best moment to strike. The guy stood motionless and laughed loudly. The monsters ran straight into his trap. A huge bolt of lightning struck the place where Hugh stood, and the dead demons flew in different directions. Among the defeated enemies, the main hero stood proudly, using the thunder of misfortune. The student's upper clothing was completely burned, and only a shard of mirror prevented the lightning from killing him. Suddenly, he remembered the giant egg he had stolen from that cave. A talking bird hatched from it, asking the guy to treat her with respect. Hugh clutched the feathered creature tightly in his hand, revealing himself to be the god of birds. Roland took advantage of the opportunity and attacked the distracted hero from behind. At the very last moment, the student managed to draw his sword and deliver a powerful blow, and the demon's weapon fell apart with a crash. The commander of the demonic squad went berserk, drooling from his open mouth. A few seconds later, something rushed past him at breakneck speed, hitting his chest. It was the main character. He stopped. A fountain of blood followed his sword. People froze in amazement. They could not believe such a crushing victory. The masters were stunned by what they saw. Some even screamed. Only Ava remained calm and congratulated her friend on raising such a powerful student. The Supreme Master ordered the title of Sacred Child to be given to the protagonist, and Laura's mouth dropped open in amazement. The girl was worried that other masters would not accept the guy because of his low status. Ava reassured her friend, saying that no one would object to the Supreme Master. Meanwhile, Hugh was catching his breath after such a difficult and brutal battle. Charlotte rushed to him to check if he was injured. The guy was completely fine. Oliver, standing aside, recognized the hero's talent and wanted to become as strong as him. The main character noticed the guy and saw a small snake on his shoulder. The young man told how he had successfully tamed the huge snake from the treasure cave. The demon introduced Oliver to the newly hatched bird god. 3 days later, the guy finally got home, and the first thing he did was start meditating. After a short time, the hero's body was completely exhausted, and he needed to rest. Instead, he took some pills out of his pocket and swallowed them deftly. Moreover, the magic mirror was assembled, but the main character did not know how to use it. The guy tried to create a small flame in his hand and touch the artifact. It activated, but Hugh couldn't figure out how it worked.